So you want to create a chat application with Remix? Well, you have come to the right video because that's what we'll create in today's video. You will learn how to use server-side events, not WebSockets, and you will learn how to make authentication work in Remix with GitHub, how to store the data in your database with PlanetScale. So let's check out the demo behind me and let's go. So on my screen right now, you see what we'll build today. So we are right now on the index page, which prompts us to log in with GitHub. I can now click on log in with GitHub, and in a second, we will get redirected to the chat application. I can now write a message. So let's say just hey, and I can click enter. You will now see that the message will get revalidated and you will see it on the screen. This also works on multiple screens since it's a live application with server-sent events. So if I send this message right here, I can also see it on another browser tab. So I hope you enjoyed this video today, and now let's go. So to get started, I will cd into my desktop directory and cd into my YouTube directory. Inside of here, I will now run npx create-remix at latest. I will click enter, and now you will see Remix will ask me for a name in a second, and I will just name it remix-chat, and let me click enter. Now, what type of app we want to create is just the basics, and as a deployment target, I will choose fly.io. And why will I choose fly.io and not, for example, Vercel? Well, in this project, we will use pretty much server-sent events, and they only work on long-lasting servers. So Vercel is pretty much a serverless platform, so you don't have any long-lasting servers. Servers only work for a couple of seconds. That's why we will need to use fly.io, but you of course could also use any other long-lasting server. So now let me click enter. Let's also use TypeScript, and let's click install. So Remix is now finished installing, and I can now go back to my Visual Studio Code, and as you see, I already opened our project right here, and you see that's pretty much an empty project, nothing has been added. And if you want to open it as well, click on File right here and Open Folder then. But now the first thing I will actually want to do is go to the README. So let me open the README right now. And now the README right here pretty much states how we can pretty much deploy our application. And right here you see we have a Fly setup. And before we can actually deploy anything, we first of all have to set up Fly. So let's do that. Now, if you have not created an account with fly.io, please do that. I already have that, so I won't bother doing that, but just run in your command fly auth sign up. Also, you'll have to download the CLI from fly.io. Just check out the docs from fly.io. Everything is pretty much very basic, very easy to set up. Now, the first thing I will actually want to do right here is just copy this command right here, which is fly launch. So let me open my terminal and let me just paste it inside of here. So now this will pretty much now just set up our application with a Docker environment and everything. So let me choose a name. I will give it just Remix Chat YouTube. Let me click enter. And now I will have to choose a region for deployment, but now I can click enter since I chose Amsterdam. And now I won't use a PostgreSQL database since I will use PlanetScale. I won't use Upstash, so let's click no. And would I like to deploy now? No, so let's click enter. So now our application is pretty much set up for the deployment part. And now you see that pretty much fly.io has set up two files, which is a Docker file and then fly.toml. So let me close my terminal first of all. Now this fly.toml is not very interesting for us. We won't need that, but the Docker file is interesting since that's pretty much how our application will be built inside of our production environment. And now if you scroll down a bit, you will see that right here, if you're using Prisma, uncomment to cache the Prisma schema. And as you probably know, we will use Prisma for our application. So let me just uncomment this add Prisma command and this run npx Prisma generate. Now, if I scroll down a bit further, you will see another comment right here is uncomment if using Prisma. So let me do that. And now our application has been pretty much set up. So the whole fly.io part is now done and we can continue. And I think the first thing I will actually do right now is start off with Tailwind CSS. So I'm now on the Tailwind CSS website, and now let me click on Docs, let me click on Framework Guides, let's scroll down to Remix, and right here we have a quick start guide provided by the Tailwind team. Now the first step is already done, that's to create a project, we have already done that. And now the next step is to set up or enable built-in Tailwind CSS support. So let me open the remix.config.js file, and now right here under the server module format, let me paste the pretty much flag, which is Tailwind, and let me set it to true. Right now we pretty much tell our Remix application or the bundler, however you want to see that we want to use Tailwind and that it should set up everything like post CSS and everything like that. So that looks good. I have now saved that. And if I now go back, the next step is to install Tailwind CSS. So let me copy that command. Let me open my terminal. Let me clear everything and let me paste that inside of here. This will now install Tailwind CSS. And now you will see the next step is to pretty much configure our template paths, and that's in this tailwind.config.ts file, which I have just installed. So let me just copy this content path right here. Now let me open my Explorer again, and right now you will see that we have installed this tailwind.config.ts file, and now let me delete this content path and paste what I have just copied. If I now go back, you will see the next step is to add the Tailwind CSS directives. So let me copy them right here. Let me go to the app folder and let me create a new file called tailwind.css. And now let me just paste that inside of here, and now we can continue. Now the next step, and pretty much for us also the last step, is to import our CSS file. So let me copy that. Let me go to the root.tsx, which is in the app folder. And now let me delete this CSS bundle href, so this links function, and let me paste what I've just copied. Also right here on the top, let me delete this import since I won't need that. So that's pretty much done. If you now go back to the quick start guide, you will see that the last step is pretty much to start the build process. But before I do that, I actually want to install a few packages that I will need for this project. So let me do that right now. So I will now open my terminal, and inside of here I will now paste a command, which is to install a few packages. Now, if you don't want to type it out yourself, just go to my GitHub repository, which is linked down below in the description. And there you will have the commands that you will have to copy and paste inside of here. And now the packages that we will install is first of all Remix utils. These are pretty much just utility functions for our Remix application. They are pretty much provided by the same author of Remix.run, so that's of course really cool. Then we install Remix.run and Remix.run socials. That's pretty much our authentication platform. Now you could of course use, for example, Supabase.run or any other hosted solution. But I think Remix.run is very easy, very flexible, and I think it's, in my opinion, actually easier than many other provided solutions. And then the last package we will need is Prisma Client. And now Prisma Client is pretty much just an ORM with which we can connect to our database, which will be Planet Scale. Now that's done. Let me just click enter, and this will now pretty much install all of these packages right here. So these packages have now been installed, but we are still not done, because right now I have installed add Prisma Client, but Prisma also needs a development dependency. All I have to pretty much paste inside of here is npm i dash capitalized D Prisma, and all this capitalized D pretty much means is that we install Prisma as a development dependency. Now I can click enter. So now Prisma is also done installing, and now we can actually continue or start with our application. So the first thing I will have to do is initialize Prisma. So the command for that is npx prisma init. This pretty much initializes Prisma, and if I open my Explorer right here, you will see it has created a new folder called Prisma. Inside of here I have now an empty schema, which I have to pretty much change since I will have to add a few models. And we have an .env, which is pretty much our database URL. And right now we don't have a database, so let's change that and create one. So I'm now on planetscale.com, and PlanetScale is pretty much an MySQL database provider, and it's also a bit special since it uses Vitess under the hood, which pretty much enables this whole platform to scale pretty much infinitely. For example, YouTube uses Vitess, so it's pretty much guaranteed that this platform can scale dramatically high. And now to get started, I will click sign in, but if you don't have an account, click on get started. And now inside of here, we'll pretty much get redirected to the dashboard. Now let me zoom in a bit. And now the first thing I will do right now is just click on create. So we want to create a new database. This will now prompt us to give it a name, and I will give it a name of Remix-chat. And for the region, I will choose Frankfurt, but you can choose whatever is nearest to you. Now let me click create database. This will take about a minute, and once that's done, I will come back. So PlanetScale is now done pretty much initializing, and right now I can click right here on get connection string. Then let me click on create password. And now inside of here we get our .env with our database URL. Now let me just copy this database URL. Let me go back and let me just delete the old one and paste the new one. So that looks good. And if I now go back, you will also see that we have to change our schema.prisma. So let me copy that. Let me open our schema.prisma and let me change it to what I've just copied. So now our schema or Prisma or database, whatever you want to name it, is done. We are done with that. We can now start with creating our models. So let's actually do that. Now the first model we will have to create is the user model. So let's do a model user and let me open that. Now this user model will pretty much just store our authenticated users, so the users that have signed in with GitHub. Inside of here we'll pretty much store the email, the image URL, the username and the messages or the message they have created. So let's give it first of all an ID, which is always required. This will be of type string @ID @default. And now inside of here, let me just pass the UUID. Now the next field I will create is the email. The email will just be of type string, and this will be @unique, since the email will be unique for every user. Now the next field pretty much will be the image URL, which will also be of type string. This won't be unique. And then for the username, this will be in string and it will be unique. And now maybe the last thing I will want to do is maybe an created even though we will not really need it, but let's just do it. So an created and this will be of type date time. Let's give it a default of now. So that looks good. And now we are done with the users table. And one more thing I want to do now is create a message table and then pretty much create a relation between message and user. So let's do that right now. We'll have a model which will be called message, and let me open that. Now again, the first field I will have to give it is the ID field. So let's give it an ID, which will be string @ID @default, and let's pass the UUID. Then the next field I want is the message, and the message will just be of type string, very basic. And then the interesting part will come pretty much now. So now pretty much the user will have multiple messages, but each message will only have one user. So that's pretty much the gist of that. And all you have to do for that is actually right here inside of the user field, or what I meant of course is the user model, just go under the created or wherever you want. And right here, let's give it a message. And the message will be of type message, which will be an array. Now let me save that. So now you see we have pretty much created this relationship one-to-many. So our user has multiple messages. So that looks good in my opinion. Now you see right here that we have a yellow squiggly line, and it pretty much complains a bit, and that's because PlanetScale does not allow us to use foreign keys. And to make it work, what you will have to do is go right here on the bottom and do an add index, which will be an array. And inside of here, I will pass the user ID. Now you see the squiggly line goes away, so that looks good. Now maybe the last thing I will do right here is do an created again. So let's do that. This will again be in date time @default, and this will just be now. So now we are done with our schema. And right now the problem is our schema is pretty much static. So what I mean with that is that our database, or PlanetScale in that sense, does not know what schema we have right now. So what we have to do is pretty much push the schema to our database. And to do that, open your terminal again. Let me just clear everything. And now I will just do an npx prisma db push. And this will push our schema to PlanetScale. You will see right now our database is in sync with our schema, and we are done right here. So now I think we can continue and actually start off with our authentication. So I'm now on pretty much the Remix of Docs website, which I've created myself. So if you want to check it out, just go to this URL right here and you can check it out for yourself. And this package was created right here by Sergio. He's a very cool dude, so definitely follow him. He created a Remix of, and he also created Remix utils and a few other packages. So so definitely click on follow right here. And now to get started, let me click on the installation guide. And right here we have pretty much an installation guide or a quick start guide how to get started. And we have already installed the package, so let me continue. And you will see that the second step is to create a session storage. And now you probably ask yourself, why do we actually create a session storage? And the easy answer for that is just that Remix of pretty much needs the session storage to store the user session. And this session storage can be any object, and we pretty much implement that with this create cookie session storage from Remix.run. And now right here you also see the file path pretty much that we have to create. So we have our app folder, we will create a new services folder and create a new file. So let's actually do that. Let me go back to our application. Let me open the Explorer right here, not a new file, sorry. And now inside of the app folder, I will create a new folder called services. And now inside of the services folder, if I go back, you will see that the route will be called session.server.ts, or not the route in that sense, but the file name. So I will now just copy that. Let me go back. And now inside of the services folder, I will paste that inside of here. Now for the pretty much content, I will again go back and let me just copy that and paste it inside of here. So all it does right here is pretty much create a new cookie session, and this cookie session storage is provided by Remix.run, so we don't have to do any extra work. And now inside of here we have to give it a few fields or a few variables in that sense. And the first one is the name. The name is pretty much dynamic, or not dynamic, but in that sense you can name it whatever you want. Right here it's just called _session, but you can give it a name of, I don't know, Remix of very cool website or whatever you want in that sense. Then the next field is the same site, and you set it to lags pretty much to help with CSRF. And then the next field is the path, and right here we just give it an empty slash. And the empty slash pretty much just ensures that the cookie works on all routes. If I would give it an slash block right now, this cookie would only work on the block route, but I don't want that. I want the cookie to work on all routes. Then I also set HTTP only to true. That's for security reasons, as you see right here with the comment. Then for the secrets, you have to pretty much create your own actual secret. Now I won't do that, but you of course should do that. Create a secret and paste that inside of here. And then for the secure field, this is interesting since this should only be enabled in production. So right now we aren't in production, and that's why we have pretty much this if statement. So if our process.env.node, env is equal to production, the secure field will be true. And if it's development like it is right now, it will just be false. So that looks good. And right here we just pretty much export our session storage. And right here we pretty much structure the session storage object. So that looks good. And now if I go back, you will see that the next step is to pretty much configure our auth. And right now all we have to do is create a new file inside of our services folder and name it auth.server.ts. So I will copy that, let me open my Explorer, and now inside of the services folder I will paste the name and enter. Now inside of here, if I go back, now right here you will see that we pretty much have to create our authenticator class, and this will pretty much, with that we will pretty much then get access to the session storage object. So let me just copy that right now and let me go back. Now right here you will see that right now we get a TypeScript error, and that's because user is not defined, or we don't have a name for user, and user is only just our actual Prisma schema. So if I double click on user right now and click on this blue, I don't know, light bulb, I guess, you will see that in quick fix is just to click on add import from Prisma client. So let me click enter, and all it does is pretty much import our user schema from Prisma client. But right now what I will do is right here do an import type. since I only want to pretty much import the type user from Prisma client. So we're now pretty much done with that, but you can also do a bit of configuration. So right here for the session storage, what I can do right now, or for the authenticator I meant, you can do an throw on error to be true, and this will just throw an error. So it's pretty much self-explanatory, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. So now we are done with that, and as you know pretty much, I want to use GitHub in this example for our authentication method. So what I will do is let me go back right here to the docs, and then if you scroll down a bit, you will see that the next step is to choose a strategy. And there are multiple strategies as you see right here, like for example the one-time password strategy, which I personally like a lot, or the email link strategy or Microsoft strategy. So there are multiple strategies, but right here we will use the auth social strategy. And the auth social strategy is pretty much a collection of multiple strategies. So if you scroll down a bit, there's pretty much a Discord strategy and Facebook, GitHub, Google, Microsoft and Twitter strategy pretty much combined in one package. But I will only use GitHub. But the ease of this package is if you want to pretty much extend this project, you can add the following strategies. So if I now scroll down to the second step, it pretty much tells us how to create a strategy instance. And all you have to pretty much do right here, if you go down a bit, right here you do an authenticator.use and create a new strategy. So what I will just do right now is copy this authenticator.use Google strategy. And if I now go back, let me just paste that for now. Now right here we get an error, and that's because the Google strategy cannot be found. Let me first of all change that, and let's do a GitHub strategy, which I import from Remix of socials. What you will see right now is that pretty much TypeScript complains, and that's because if I hover over this squiggly line right here, you will see that type GitHub profile is missing the following properties from getResult, which is ID, which is in string, email, image URL, username, and created at. And if you can remember, all that is pretty much the schema that we have created. So if I go back, that's right here our user schema. So the ID, email, image URL, username, created at, everything like that. So that looks good. And what we'll have to do right now is actually configure our strategy. Let's first of all start with creating a callback URL. So if I go back, you will see right here we have in const get callback. So let me copy that and let's go back. Let me just paste it right here. And now let me import the socials provider. So Remix of socials. And now for the local host, this won't be 3333, but this will be just 3000, just like that. And now for the provider, that looks all good. Now right here, we pretty much have to change it from Google to GitHub, since we will use GitHub. And now that's done. Now for the client ID and client secret, I will want to use .env files or variables. So let me delete this your client ID and do in process.env.github client underscore ID. And this will be an as, so let me do it as string. And then for the client secret, let me also change that. And let's do in process.env.github secret underscore key, and this will also be an as string so that TypeScript does not complain. So now inside of this async profile, so in this function right here, we will pretty much check if the user already exists, and if the user does not exist, we create a new user. But before we can actually do that, we will actually have to create a database instance or a Prisma instance and global instance, since right now in the development environment, pretty much if we reload our page, we will pretty much get a reconnect to our database, and then Prisma would give us an error that we have too many connections. So what you will have to do right now is just click on the app folder, and inside of the app folder, we'll create a new file called just db.server.ts. And now inside of here, I will paste that right now and just go to my GitHub and copy that. That's pretty much standard stuff. So you always have to do that if you work with Prisma in a development environment. And all we do right here is pretty much check if our Prisma client is in the production environment. And if it's not in the production environment, we set our Prisma client to a global variable. So I think that's understandable. And now we can continue. So what I will do right now right here is delete this return profile and this comment, since I won't need that. And let me start off fresh. So now the first thing I will do right now is pretty much get the user. So let me do an let user. This will be just equal to await db, which I import from our db.server, .user.find unique. And then inside of here, let me give it an where. And the where will just be email, which will be equal to the profile.emails. And emails is an array, and I want to get the first value inside of the array. So let's do an array with 0. And then this will be in dot value, since I want to get the email value. Now that looks good in my opinion. So what I will do right now is pretty much check if the user already exists, or in that sense, if the user does not exist. So right here, I will just check if the user does not exist. What I will do is pretty much create a new user. So what you will do is an user equals to await db.user.create. And now inside of here, we have to pass our data. So right here, let's do in data. And if I click now on Control Spacebar, you will see that we have to give it the email. And the email will just be the profile.emails. Again, we want to get the first item in the array, .value. If I add a comma and again click on Control Spacebar, the next value will be the image URL. So all I will do is in profile, let me do in colon, so profile.json or ._json.avatar URL. And now the next value will be the username, and the username will just be the profile._json.login. So under this await create user, what I will do right here is just an if the user does not exist, I will throw a new error. And then for the error message, just let's just do an unable to create the user. So that looks good, but TypeScript still complains, and that's because we have to pretty much return our user. So under this if user check, what I will just do is in return user. And now you'll see that the whole TypeScript error is gone. We have no errors anymore, and we have now created pretty much the basic authenticator. And in that sense, we are actually done with that. Now, if I go back and scroll down a bit, you will see that the next step is to pretty much set up our routes. So for example, the provider callback, the provider, and the login and logout pretty much route. So let's start with that. So now the first file I want to create, or the first route I want to create, is the provider route. So with that, I can pretty much log in with multiple authentication services, so GitHub or Google or anything. And this will be pretty much dynamic. So what I will do is an $, and with the $, I tell Remix that this value will be dynamic.provider.tsx. So that looks good. So inside of here, let me create an export async function, which will be of type action. And then inside of here, this will have a type of action args, which I import from Remix.run node. And let me open that function. So that looks good. And now inside of here, what I can do right now is check if we pretty much get our params and if it's in string. So inside of here, I get the params and the request object. And what I can do right here is just pretty much check if the type of params.provider, let me spell provider correctly, is not equal to string. What I will want to do is throw a new error. So let me do pretty much throw new error, and let's give it an error message of invalid provider. So now that looks good, and now we can pretty much create our authentication service, so pretty much our function to authenticate the user with GitHub. And all you have to do for that is do a return await authenticator, which I import from our services folder, .authenticate. And now inside of here, I will pass our params.provider. So again, our provider's dynamic. So later in the login file, I will pretty much pass an GitHub param, and then we will get it right here. Then I will also have to pass our request object right here, and I will also want to give it a few params. So I want to give it in success redirect, and I want to give it in failure redirect. Now the failure redirect will only be the index page. So let me do in slash, and then for the success redirect, I will do in slash chat. So that looks good. And I think we are now actually done with that, and now we can continue. So now the next step will be to pretty much create a callback function. So what I will do right now is create a new file or a new route, which will be called auth.$provider.callback.tsx. So that looks good. And inside of here, what I will now do is pretty much do again the same. So what I will do right now is just copy that and paste that again inside of our callback, since nothing will really change and that's everything the same. So we are now done with our whole authentication process. And now we can actually start with the fun stuff, and that's with our UI. So what I will do right now is go to my root.tsx, and what I will want to create is pretty much a nav bar. So for that I will create a new layout function. So let me do a function layout, and now inside of here let me open that. And what I will want to do now is pretty much let me do a return. Let me give it an empty div right here. Inside of this div I will create a nav, and now let me style that nav. So let's give it a class name of flex. px will be 10, py will be 5, justify will be between, we will have a fixed, top will be 0, left will be 0, and we'll have a w full, and bg will be white. That looks good. And now inside of this nav I want to create an h1 tag. Let me style that. So let's give it a class name of text, which will be black, and we'll have a text which will be 3XL, and font which will be bold. Now inside of this h1 tag let me just write Marshal. Let me create a span, and let's do a chat. Now let me also style that span. So let's give it a class name of text, which will be teal 500. Now that looks good. And what I want to do now is pretty much create a ternary. So with the ternary, I will check if the user is logged in. And if the user is logged in, I will create a logout button. And if the user is not logged in, I want to show the login button. So to do that, we will have to create a new loader function. And with the loader, I will pretty much check our session storage and check if the user is existent, and I will return that then. So all you have to do is pretty much do an export async function, and this will be of the name loader. And then inside of here, I will pass the loader args, which I import from Remix.run node. And now let me open that function. Now also what I want to get is the request object, and now we can actually continue. So now I will pretty much fetch our session storage inside of here, and if you want to check it out inside of the docs, you can click for example on the quick start guide, and right here it pretty much tells us we can export a loader function where we can check if the user is authenticated with the authenticator.isAuthenticated function. So I guess that's all you have to know. So let's actually do that. So what I will do is a const user, which will be equal to await authenticator, which I import from our services. This will be in .isAuthenticated, and let me pass the request. Now the last thing I will have to do right here is pretty much return our user. So let's do return JSON. I import JSON from Remix.run node, and let me pass the user. So now that looks good. But now I also want to get the user inside of our front end. So for that, Remix has a handy hook, which is called use loader data. So what I will do right here is a const empty brackets equal to use loader data. And now inside of here, I can pass in generic. So what I will do is a generic, which will be type of loader. And now if I pretty much click on Control Spacebar right here, you will right here see that we will get the user type. And now if I hover over the user, you will see that the user has these types. So the ID, email, image URL, username. Now, if you're new to Remix.run, you probably don't really understand how we actually get these types. And the easy answer for that is inside of our auth.server.ts, we create this authenticator class. And right here we pass our user. And with this user generic, we pretty much get our types right here. So that's the cool thing with Remix.run and TypeScript. We get the types and everything looks perfect. We have full type safety and we can't misspell anything. So now that looks good. So under this h1 tag, what I will now do is pretty much check if the user is existent. I want to return a logout button. And if he is not existent, I want to return something else. So let me first of all create the pretty much logout button. So inside of here, I will create a form, and the form is imported from Remix.run React. And inside of the form, I will have a button pretty much. Now let me first of all pretty much configure the form. So the first field we'll have to do is give it a method, since right now pretty much the standard or the initial state is in get method, but I don't want to get data, I want to post data. So let me change that to in post. And then I also want to give it an action, and the action will be a /logout. And we haven't created the logout route, so let me do that right now. So to do that, open your Explorer, and now inside of the routes, create a new file called logout.tsx. Now inside of this logout, we pretty much again create an action. So let's do an export async function, which will have the name action. Inside of here, I will have the action args, and I want to get a request object. Now let me open that function, and all I will have to do right now is pretty much call our authenticator and do an authenticator.logout. So let me do that right now. So I will do a return, let me spell that correctly, return await authenticator, which I import from our services dot logout, and inside of here I will have to pass our request. And now one thing I can also do is pretty much give it the redirect. So where do I want to redirect the user after the logout? So right here, let me just pass an redirect to, and the redirect to will just be in slash, since I want to redirect the user to the index page, so to localhost 3000 right now. So that looks good. And now we can continue right here. So now I want to pretty much also style that form. So let me give it a class name, which will just be our flex, and items will be center. Now that looks good in my opinion. And what I will want to do now is before the button, let me actually also show the user image. So let me create an image tag, and let me change the source from a string to the user.image URL, which I get from pretty much GitHub. For the alt, I will just do an user profile photo. That looks good. And let me also style that. So let's give it a class name of W, which will be 12, H will be 12, rounded will be full, and then we'll also have a margin right, which will be 3. So that looks good. And now I think I can continue with the button. So for the button, it will have a type, which will be submit, and we will also have a class name. So let's give it a class name, which will be W full, flex, items will be center. We'll have an justify, which will be center. Gap will be 2. We'll have a rounded, which will be LG. BG, which will be red, 500. We'll have an PX, which will be 8. PY, which will be 3. Text, which will be center. We'll have a text, which will be small. And we'll have a font, which will be semi-bold. We'll have a text, which will be white. We'll have an outline, which will be just none. And wing, which will be red, 300. We'll have a transition, so let me spell that correctly, and it will have a duration of 100, and hover, which will be BG red 600. Now that looks, I think, good in my opinion. One more thing I will pretty much add right now is an MD, which will just be text of base. So now that looks good. And now for the button value, let's just give it a logout. So let me save that. And what I want to create now is the login button. So that's pretty much again the same thing. So I will again have to use a form, which is pretty much provided by Remix. I will again have to give it a method, and the method will again be post, and the action will be /auth/GitHub. And now inside of here, let me again create a button. Let's give it a type, and the type will again be just submit, since I submit our form with this button. And then let's give it a class name. And let me just copy this whole class name, since it will be pretty much the same, and we will only change the color. So let me paste that. And now everywhere where we have this red, let me change it to teal. So teal 500 will be the background, and on hover we will have also a teal of 600. So now I think that's all. Now we also have this wing, so let me change it to wing teal 300. So I think that looks good. Now let me also give it a value of login. And now if I save that, and let me open my terminal, and let me clear everything, and let me run npm run dev, which will pretty much start the dev server on localhost 3000. So I'm now on localhost 3000, and as you see, you don't see what I want to see, which is the nav bar. And that's because if I go back and open our routes folder and open the underscore index.tsx, that's what's shown right now. So that's the default template Remix ships with, and that's what we see right now. But I want to pretty much show my layout inside of the root.tsx, so I want to show pretty much my nav bar. And how do I do that? All you have to do right now is actually go on top right here inside of our export default function app. So what you will have to do is pretty much wrap this whole outlet till live reload inside of our layout. So to do that, what you will have to do is copy that. Now let me pretty much add this layout and let me paste that back. Now if I save that and go back, you see the nav bar right here, and that looks perfect. But now I see another problem. And that's right now our index page right here is not shown inside of this page. And if I go to root.tsx, we also get an error for that. And the error is pretty much just that we don't pass our children inside of the layout. So we only have this nav bar, but we don't have the children, which are pretty much all of the routes. So index page, chat page, any route in that sense. So to change that, let me get the children inside of the layout. Let me destructure that. And now you will see TypeScript complaints, and that's because TypeScript does not know what type children are. Now you of course could give it also just in children of type any, and that's fine. But we are pros, so we will just do it the right way, and children will be of type React Node, which is imported from React. Now you see TypeScript does not complain anymore, and what I will pretty much do now is go under this nav element and create a new main element, and inside of this main element I will pass my children. And if I save that now and go on top again, you will see we don't have this error anymore. And if I now go back to localhost 3000, you also see that we have this index page right here. So that looks good. Now, one thing you see right here is that we only get this remix docs, and that's pretty much because our nav bar is fixed. And if I scroll down, you will see that we get it right here. So right now our index page is pretty much right here on the top, and it's hidden because of our nav bar. But for our application, of course, we will fix that. So now I think the first thing we will actually do is start off with the index page so that we see something. So what I will do right now is just delete everything inside of this export default function. So everything inside of this return, and let's start off fresh. So let's create a new div element and let me style that. So let's give it a class name of max width will be XL, MX will be auto, border we'll have a rounded, which will be LG, and padding, which will be 10, and we'll have a margin top of 32. Now inside of this div, I want to create an h1 tag, and let me style that. So let's give it a class name of text, which will be 4XL, font, which will be semi-bold, and we'll have a text, which will be center. Inside of this h1 tag, let me give it a value, which will be login to use chat, and let's give it an exclamation mark. So now that looks good. And now under this h1 tag, let me create a form, and I will again import our form from Remix.run React. So let me do that. And again, I will have to do a bit of configuration. So I will have to give it a method, and the method will again be post. We'll have an action, and the action will be just /auth/GitHub. And let's give it a class name, which will just be margin top of 8. So that looks good. And now inside of this form, I can now create a button, and let's give it again a type, and the type will just be submit, and I will have to give it a class name. And for the class name, let me again go to the root.tsx, and let me just copy the class name of the button right here. So once that's copied, I can come back and paste it inside of here. Now for the color, I will change it from teal to pretty much orange, since that's the color of GitHub. So let me do that right here. Everything which is teal will be changed to our orange color. So that looks good now. And if I now go back, you will right here see login to use chat, and we have this indigo or this orange, this orange background color. Now what I will have to give it now is a value. So let me just give it a value to see something. So let's do a login with GitHub. And now if I go back, you will right here see login with GitHub. So now we are pretty much done with that, but I already see one thing I don't like, and that's login to use chat is not very semi-bold. So it looks, in my opinion right now, pretty much normal. So let me check if I did any error. And right here we have text for XL and font semi-bold. And right here you see I have misspelled font. So let me change that. And if I save that and go back, you will see we'll get a way better optic or a way better UI in that sense. So I think we are now done with the nav bar and with the index page. And we can now check out if our authentication works. So right now let me click on login with GitHub. And right here we see we get an error. This is not the web page you're looking for. So right now I don't know what the error is. So let's actually check it out. Let me again open the auth.server.ts. And right here we are given in GitHub strategy. And I see the error. Right here we give it pretty much .env variables. So the GitHub client ID and the GitHub secret key. But if you check out our .env file right here, you see we haven't created these variables. So let's change that. So I'm now at the GitHub website. Let me zoom in a bit for you. And what you will have to do now is click on your profile right here, click on settings, and once in the settings, click on right here, developer settings. Now inside of the developer settings, click on OAuth apps and then create a new OAuth app. Now inside of here, we'll have to give it an application name. And then for the application name, let me just name it Remix, Chat, YouTube. Then for the homepage URL, right now I will just go to localhost 3000 and copy that and paste that inside of here. So the homepage URL is just http localhost 3000. I won't give it in description. And for the callback URL, let me open my auth.server.ts. And then right here we get our callback. So let me copy that right now. Let's go back right here and let me change this provider to GitHub, since we'll use the GitHub provider inside of here. So that's done. So our authorization callback URL is pretty much http localhost 3000 /auth/github/callback. So now that's done. So I can now click on register application. Now right here we get our client ID. So let me first of all go back to my .env. Let me close my Explorer, and we'll have to create two new environment variables. So the first one is the GitHub client ID. So let me copy that. This will be pretty much equal to this client ID. So let me copy that. Let me paste that inside of here. And then the second value will be the GitHub secret key. So let me copy that. Let me paste that inside of here. And this will have the value of this client secret. So let me generate a new client secret and make sure that you copy this client secret, since you won't see it again. So let me copy it right here and let me paste that now inside of here. So now in theory, everything should work. So what I will have to do right now is restart my dev server, since if you create new environment variables, you have to pretty much restart your dev server to propagate. So let's do an npm run dev again. And now if I go back to localhost 3000, let me reload that again. And if I now click on login with GitHub, everything should work. So the first thing already works. We get redirected to this GitHub login page. And if I now click on authorize pretty much my account, we should get redirected and we get an error. So let me see the message. You made a GET request, but did not provide a loader for route auth.provider.callback. And yes, I think that's actually correct, since if I go back and let me open the callback, so right here, I gave it an action, and that's not correct. It should not be an action. It should actually be a loader. And let me change the action args to the loader args. So now if I go back and let me pretty much go to localhost 3000 again, and if I now click on login with GitHub, this should in theory now work. And yes, we get redirected to /chat, and /chat pretty much throws in 404 not found. And that's correct. That's because we haven't created the route. So let me go back to localhost 3000 and see if the navbar works. And yes, you see that works. We right here get my image URL and we get this logout. So now the first thing I will actually do is go back, and now inside of our routes folder, let me create a new file called chat.tsx, and let me just do an export default function, and let's give it a name of chat, and let me open that. Let me also do a return h1, and let's say hello, from the chat route, you should be authenticated. So something like that. Let me save that And if I now go back to /chat, you will see it pretty much works. So now we don't get any 404 errors. So that looks now great in my opinion. But now one thing happens right now that I don't like. So if I again go back to localhost 3000, you see I get redirected to here, but I don't want that. If the user is authenticated, I don't want to show the user this index page. I only want them to pretty much be on this chat route. So what I will pretty much do is go to my index page and create a new loader function. So let's do an export async function, which will be in loader. I will get again the loader args inside of here, and let me open that function. So what I want to do inside of here is pretty much check if the user is already logged in. I want to pretty much redirect him to the chat route, and I don't want to show this index page. So what I will do is just in return await authenticator, which I import from the services, dot is authenticated. Let me pass the request, and let me first of all get the request right here. And now what I will do is doing a bit of configuration. So if the user exists, let's do in success redirect, and let's do in /chat. If I now save that and go back to our index page, you see we get instantly redirected to chat. And if I now again delete the /chat and just go to localhost 3000 and click enter, you will see I get redirected to /chat, and I don't even see the index page. That's again because of server-side rendering, so that looks perfect. And now we can create this whole chat UI and this whole logic behind the chat page. Now, before I actually do that, let me first of all check out if actually logout works. So let me click on the button logout. We now get redirected to our index page, and we get again this login button. And if I now go to /chat, let me see if I can reach that route. And yes, I can reach that route, but that's not what I want, because what I want is to pretty much only allow authenticated users to reach that chat route. So let me again go to the chat.tsx right here, and let's create a loader function inside of here. So let's do an export async function, which will be a loader. And inside of here, let me get the loader args, so which I imported from Remix.run node, and let me open that. Let me also get the request object. And what I want to do now is pretty much do an const user, which will be equal to await authenticator, which I import from the services, dot is authenticated. Let me pass the request. And what I want to do now is do an, if the user pretty much not exists, I want to do a failure redirect. And all this failure redirect pretty much does is if the user is not existent, so if we don't have an authenticated user, we will pretty much just redirect this user to the index page to authenticate. So now I think that actually works. Now I have to also return something. Let's just do a return null for now. And if I now save that, and if I now try to reach that /chat route, you will see that we get redirected to localhost 3000, so to our index page, and that's because we are not authenticated. And if I now click on login, in theory we should be now logged in, and we get redirected to /chat, so that looks good. And now let me continue. So now inside of this chat route, let me delete this h1 tag, and let's create a new return statement. Let me first of all start with a div, and let me style that. So let's give it a class name of h, which will be screen, bg, which will be gray, 200, flex, and flex call. Now inside of this div, I want to create another div, and let me style that. So let's give it a class name of padding 6, flex will be grow. Then we'll also have a max height, which will be screen, overflow y will be auto, and we'll have a padding y of 32. Now that looks good. And inside of this div, let me create another div, and let me style that. So let's give it a class name of flex, flex which will be call, and gap which will be just 4. If I now save that and go back, you will see right now we get this white nav bar, and then this gray pretty much background for our chat route. And what I want to do now is actually create this whole input, so the input for the user to create a message. So let me go back, and now under this last div, or above the last div, I'm sorry, let me create a form element. So the form is imported from Remix.run React, and let me give it a bit of configuration. So the method will be post, and let me give it a class name, which will be padding of 6. We'll have a fixed, the bottom will be 0, left will be 0, W will be full, and BG will be white. Now inside of this form, let me give it a div and let me style that. So let's give it a class name of flex. And now let me create an input right here, and the input type will be text. The name, so let me add a name. The name will just be message. And then let's also give it a placeholder. So the placeholder will just be pretty much type your message, ... something like that. Now let me also give it a class name, and the class name will just be flex, which will be grow. Padding y will be 2, and we'll have a padding x of 4. And then I think the last one will be just outline, which will be none. And let me save that. And now under this input, I want to pretty much create a button to send that message. So let's do a button. The type right here will just be submit. So let's do that. Let's give it also a class name. And for the class name, let me give it a BG of teal 500. Let's give it a hover of BG teal 600. Let's also give it a text, which will be white. Padding y of 2. Padding x will be 4. Rounded right will be LG. And I think that looks good. Now for the value, let's just say send. So let me add that. Let's save that and let's go back. So now you pretty much see right here our input. Let me zoom in a bit for you. You pretty much see our nav bar on top and our input right here with the send button. Let me maybe change that. So let's not do only rounded right LG. Let's do everything rounded. So let me pretty much delete this whole right. And now if I save that and go back, you will now see our button is rounded, and I think that looks perfect. So now I think we can create a logic behind this whole chat application. So for this application, as I already said, we will use server sent events. Now, if you're new to Remix or the web platform in that sense, you may not know what server sent events are, because back then when I coded with Next.js, all I knew about were WebSockets and I used them and it was great. And then once I came to Remix and pretty much embraced the whole philosophy around Remix, so to pretty much use the platform which is given to us, I learned about server sent events. And then once I read about them a bit, I thought to myself, well, why do I use WebSockets? At the end of the day, server sent events are pretty great. And for my use cases, pretty much server sent events are 100% okay to use. Of course, server sent events are not always optimal for every use case, since if you read about a bit through the docs or a bit through the MDN docs in that sense, so the developer docs from Mozilla, you will learn that pretty much the event source or server sent events are one directional. And now server sent events are of course not every time 100% perfect. If you want to learn more about it, definitely ask, I don't know, Google or ChatGPT. There are pros and cons to every approach, but I think in most applications, server sent events are 100% fine and you can use them. And now you should also bear in mind, server sent events don't work on serverless platforms. So in that sense, it won't work on Netlify, on Vercel, on Cloudflare Pages. Anything that's serverless won't work with server sent events. You will need a full scale server, for example, fly.io. So if you want to use a serverless platform, you don't really have an option. You will have to use WebSockets, but that's fine. And now I think we can actually continue. Now to make pretty much server sent events work, you will have to pretty much create an event emitter. So inside of the services folder, create a new file, which will be called emitter.server.ts. Now the server keyword pretty much just tells Remix to only run the code on the server and never on the client. And now inside of here, let me just first of all close my Explorer. So right here I will have now to import the event emitter. So let me do an import, empty brackets, which will be from, and this will be node : events. And now right here, if I click Control Spacebar, so on this brackets, you will right here get the event emitter. So that looks good. And what I have to do now is export this event emitter. So let's do an export let emitter, and this will be equal to new event emitter. And now that looks good in my opinion. So what we'll have to do now is actually go right here inside of our app folder, and then inside of our routes folder, let's create a new file, which will just be called chat.subscribe .ts. So now inside of this file, we pretty much create the event stream and pretty much serve our messages in that sense. So right here, we'll create a loader function. So let me do an export function loader. And let me get, first of all, let's do a loader args, which is imported from Remix.run node. And inside of here, let me get pretty much the request object. Now let me open that function. And now inside of here, I will pretty much have to return an event stream. And for that, all you have to do is pretty much do a return event stream. And event stream is imported from Remix utils. And now inside of here, you will have to pass the request.signal. And then you will have to create a new function, which will just have the name setup. And you will have to pass pretty much the param of send. Now let me open that function. And now inside of here, I will have to create another function. And the function will be called listener. So let me spell that correctly. And right here, let me get the params, which will be value, which will be of type string. And now let me open that function. Inside of here, I will now pass my send. And I will pretty much get the event. And now for the event, I will have to pass the name. So pretty much server-send events work like that you have an event name. And with the event name, you can pretty much get the data. And the event name will just be message. And then I will also have to pass the data. And the data will just be the value, which I get from the listener. So now that's pretty much almost done. What I will have to do now is do an emitter.on. And emitter is imported from our services, which I've just created. And inside of here, let me pass the message. And let's also pass the listener, just like that. And now the last thing I will have to do is create a cleanup function. So let's do a return function. And that's also why the setup right here complains. If I would pretty much delete that again and hover over setup, you see type void is not assignable to type cleanup function. So right here, again, let me do a return function, which will have the name of cleanup. And let me pretty much open that function. And now inside of here, I will do an emitter.off. Let me again pass the message event. And let me also pass our listener. So now if I save that, we don't get any errors. So now in theory, I think actually everything works. Let me check if message is spelled everywhere correctly. And yes, that looks good. So I think we are done with that. And we can now continue with our chat UI again. So now inside of this chat UI route, the first thing I think I want to do is actually get pretty much our data from the loader. So now inside of this loader, I want to pretty much get the messages from our database. So right now it will be an empty array, but once we create a few messages, we of course will propagate them inside of our database. So what I will right here do is let me delete this return statement and let's do a const data, which will be equal to await db, which is imported from our db.server file, .message.find many. And now inside of here, let me select a few things. So I want to get a message, so this will be true. And I want to get the ID, which will also be true. So now a few other things I want to get is actually also the username and the image URL from the sender of the message. And to do that, what I will have to do right here is get the user and then let me select a few things. So let's do a select. And what I want to get is the username, which will be true. And I want to get the image URL. Let me do that correctly. Image URL, which will also be true. So now that's actually all we need. We only need the message, we need the ID, we need to get the username of the sender and the image of the sender. So that looks good. Now what I want to do also is pretty much order the messages. So let's do an order by, and the order by will be an created at, which will be ascending. And what I will also want to do, I don't want to get all messages. So maybe if this pretty much chat application gets big and we have hundreds of messages, I don't want to render all of the messages. So I want to pretty much only get the most recent posts. So I only want to get 50 of the most recent posts. So let me do a take, and let's take the first 50 first messages. And what I want to do now actually is do a return. So let's do a return JSON, which is imported from Remix.run node, and let me import the data, or not import, but return the data. So now, right here in our chat function, or in that sense in our front end, let me get the data which I pretty much create in our loader, or not create, but which I return from my loader. So what I will do again is doing const, and right here I will destructure it, and this will be equal to the use loader hook, which I import from Remix.run React, and let me pass in generic, which will be type of loader, and then right here, let me click on pretty much control spacebar, and you will see we get data back. And we also get the types for data, so we get the message, the ID, and the username and image URL. So that looks good. So now we pretty much get our data from Remix, and that's great. But we'll also get live data from our event source, and right now we wouldn't really store it anywhere. So what I want to do is pretty much create a state, which I will then combine with my loader data and with my live data. So at the end of the day, our UI will be pretty much combined with live data and data from the server. So let me create a new state, which will be just called const, and right here we'll have the name of total comments and set total. Let me spell that correctly, comments. And this will just be equal to use state, and inside of here I will have to pass initial state, and the initial state will just be the data which I get from my server. So that looks good. And now I want to get the data from my event source. So I will do in const current comments. So that will be pretty much our constant for the live comments or messages. And this will be then equal to use event source. And I have to import use event source from our from Remix utils. And inside of here, first of all, I have to pretty much pass the route where we have our chat.subscribe event source. So this will be just in /chat/subscribe. And then I will also have to pass the event. And right here, if you can remember, the name for the event will just be message. So if I go back to my chat.subscribe route right here, you see that our emitter works on the event message. And the route is called chat.subscribe.ts. So that's what I do right here. Our use event source works from this route right here, and the event is just called message. So that looks good. Now the next thing I want to do is pretty much create a use effect. And with the use effect, I will pretty much, whenever we get a new message, I will just pretty much store it inside of our state. So let me do that right now. So let me create a new use effect, and this will be imported from React, and let me open that. Now we'll also give it a dependency array, and let's do in current comments. So the use effect will always rerun when we get a new comment or a new message in that sense. And now inside of this use effect, what I want to do is actually check if the comments that we get, so the current comments, if they are not null, I will set the message inside of our state, and if they are null, I won't do anything. So what I will do right here is just an if statement. So if current comments is equal or is not equal in that sense to null, let me open that. And now inside of here, I want to pretty much get our state and pretty much pass our new comments inside of our total comments state. So for that, let me do and set total comments. Let me get the previous comments. And then inside of here, let me do an array. Let me spread my previous comments, and let me add my new current comments. So now that looks good, and we get an error. Let me check what the error is. And right here, if I hover over it, you see that the error is type string is not assignable to type serialized object. And that's correct. So what I will have to do is actually right here above this if statement, let me pretty much pass my, or not pass, but let me convert my current comments in a JSON object. So what I will do is create a new constant called passed comments, which will be equal to JSON.pass. And right here, let me pass my current comments, and this will be of type string. What I will have to do now is pretty much change this if statement to our passed comments. And right here, instead of the current comments, let me change it to passed comments. If I now save that, you see we don't get this error anymore, and our use effect should now work. So I think we are now done with the logic with our whole pretty much live data. So I think we can now continue with creating our UI, so to show our messages now. So to do that, right here inside of our div element with the class name of flex, flex call and gap4, let me pretty much map over our comments. So let's do an pretty much total comments dot map, and inside of here we'll get a message and we'll get an index. And now let me just return that. So now that looks good, and you also see we get a type for message, so we get this whole TypeScript benefit, and our index will pretty much just iterate over our array, so we get pretty much the index. So right here inside of here, now let me create a new div element, and I will have to give it a key, and the key will just be pretty much the index. And now inside of this div, I want to create another div, and let me give it a class name, which will just be pretty much flex, and items, which will be center. Now inside of this div, I want to pretty much show the image or the image URL of the user. So what I will do is create an image tag, and then for the source, let me just give it the message.user.image URL, and for the alt, let me just do an profile image. So let me spell that correctly, profile image of user. And I think I also want to style that, so let's give it a class name of h12, w12. Let's give it an object, which will just be cover. And I think let's also give it a rounded of LG and margin right of 4. Now that looks good, I think. And now under this image tag, I want to create another div element. Let me style that. So let's give it a class name of rounded, which will be LG, BG, which will be white, padding 4, which will be 4, shadow, which will be just medium, and we'll have in self, which will be start. So now that's great, and right here what I want to get inside of this div is pretty much the message. So let's get the message.message. So now one more thing I want to do is pretty much also show the username of the pretty much of the sender. So under this div element with the message and under the following div, let me create a p tag. Let me give it a class name first of all, which will just be of font, which will be light. Then we'll also have a text, which will be small, and a text, which will be gray of 600. And then inside of this p tag, now let me just get the message. So let's do a message.user.username. So now that looks perfect, I think. But if I go back to our localhost 3000 and reload everything, we still see no messages. And that's because we haven't created any messages. So what I will have to do right now actually let me test it out. Let's just write a message of, hey, do I see something? So pretty much like that. I think that's misspelled, but that's okay. And if I click now on send, you will see we get an error. And that's because we don't have an action. And that's correct, we don't have an action, so let's create an action. And with this action, we will pretty much post our data to the server, and we'll also use the emitter to pretty much emit our message. So let me reload the page to not see that error anymore. Let's go back to my Visual Studio Code, and let's create a new action. And let's create a new function, so let's do an export, async function. Let me spell function correctly, and let's give it the name of action. Let me get the action args right here, which I import from Remix.run node, and let me open that function. Now inside of this function, let me first of all get a request object. So just like that. Now I only want to, pretty much to allow users or authenticated users in that sense to create messages. So if the user is not authenticated, what I want to do is pretty much create a failure redirect. So let's do just a const user, which will be equal to await authenticator. Let me spell await correctly. Dot is authenticated. Let me pass the request, and let's create a failure redirect, which will be just the index page. So in slash. So now that looks good. And what I want to do now is get the form data. So let's do a const form data, and this will just be equal to await request dot form data, and that now looks good. So now I pretty much get the form data from our form, and the data of the form is pretty much the message. So right here we have created a name of message, and then through this message name we can get the value. So if I go back on top, what I can do now is pretty much doing const message, which will be equal to form data dot get, and what I want to get is the message. Now let me scroll down and let me check if I have spelled that correctly, since that's sadly not type safe. And yes, I have spelled that correctly, so that looks great. What I want to do now is actually create a try catch statement. So let me do a try, and let's also open a catch statement right here. And in the try, I want to pretty much post the data to our server, or not to our server, but to our database. And I want to emit the message. So what I will do right here is do a const data, which will be equal to await db.message.create, just like that. Now I will have to give it a bit of data, and the data will just be message, and the message will be of type message. And right here, Prisma pretty much complains or TypeScript in that sense. And that's because right here, message right now is of type form data entry, but it should be of type string. So what I will do right here is message as string. So now we don't get this error anymore. And also I will have to pass my user ID, and the user ID will just be of type user.id. So now that looks good. And if I would leave it now like that and hover over this data, you will see that if I return this data, I only get the ID, the message, the user ID, and the created at a timestamp. But I don't want that. I also want to get the pretty much user name and the image URL from this returned data. So under this data, I want to do an include, and I want to include the user. And right here, let me do a select, and I want to select the username, which will be true, and I want to get the image URL, which will also be true. Now let me save that. And now if I hover over data, you will pretty much see that I get the user data, which is the username and image URL, and I get the message, the ID, the user ID, and the created at. So that looks perfect in my opinion. And now I want to create also an emitter. So right pretty much under this constant of data, let me do an emitter. And this emitter is again imported from the services .emit, since I want to emit a new event or a new message. Right here, I will have now to pass two things. So right here, you will see I have to pass an event, and I will have to pass the message or the value in that sense. So let me first of all give it the event name, and the event name is just message. And now for the value, that's interesting, since if I hover over data, data will be pretty much of type an object type. So what I will have to do right now is actually right here, use upticks, and I will have to pretty much stringify my JSON data, or not my JSON data, but my returned data. So I will do in JSON.stringify, let me pass the data, and then after that, let me just add an /n/n. So now that should work actually. So now we pretty much stringify our object into a string in that sense. And what I want to do now is actually also do a return statement. So let's do a return JSON, and let me just pretty much return nothing, so null. And let's give it a status of just, let's say, let me think, 201. So now that looks good. I will also have to create a catch statement. So I want to catch an error right here. So let me add that. And for the catch, let me just do a throw right here, throw error. So just like that. Now right here you see it's pretty simple. I only throw an error, but of course in an actual application, you should check what type of error that is, and pretty much then also show the error based on that if statement. So you should pretty much first of all check what type of error that is. So now we are done actually, and now the interesting thing comes. We will now check if everything works, since I actually don't know if everything works, and that will be also interesting for myself. So let me go back to the application. Let me reload everything to be safe. And let me create a new message. So let's do an hello. Does this work? Question mark. And now let me click on send. So right here we now get the message. Hello, does this work? And I already see I get an error with padding. That does not look how I want it to look. So let me go back and check where the error is. So the error is right here. I gave it in padding X of 4. It shouldn't be in padding X of 4, but it should be an overall padding, since I want to have padding on all sides. If I now go back and reload that, you will see the padding now looks perfect. So now that looks great, and I think I'm actually done with that. So now we see our action works, and as you see, I've now created two pretty much pages right here, since I want to now test out if live data works. So right here we have just tested that our action works, our data gets revalidated automatically, so that's perfect. But we haven't tested out if our server sent events work and if this whole use effect and everything works good. So what I will do right here is type a new message. So let me just do hello live data and let me click on send. And right here you see that we get a message right here, and also we get this message instantly right here. So I can say our live data works. So now to test out if it also works with another browser, I have opened now a new pretty much browser, which is called Arc. So right here I have Chrome, I have another page in Chrome, and I have another browser, which is Arc. So let me now test out if this also works. So what I will do right here inside of this Arc field, let me create a new message and say hello from a other browser, just like that. And let me click send. And you will see we get a message right here, and we get a message right here, and we get a message right here. So that works perfectly, just like I wanted to. Now, one thing you will see is if I again send a message, so let's say just hello again, and let me click enter. One thing you will see is that this input field is not being cleared. And right now I won't change that, but if you want to do that, right here, Ryan from the Remix team has created a small video called Remix Single. And right here it's just a small video, 4 minutes long, and it will pretty much just tell you or explain to you how to clear inputs after form submissions. So you will have to create a form ref and then small use effect, and with that you can then pretty much just clear the input. So that's great. If you want to do that, check out this video, subscribe to the channel. I will do that right now. And now let's go back. Now, one thing you will see if I create a few more messages. So let's do just some gibberish. Let me click send. Let me do a bit more gibberish right here. Let's click send. You will see right now if I reload the page that we stay on the top, but all of our recent messages are on the bottom right here. So that's not what I want to do. What I want to do is if I reload the page right now, I want to pretty much get to the bottom. I want to be here. I don't want to be on the top. And to do that, we actually have to create a use effect, which will be a scroll to bottom use effect. And with that, we can then, once the page is pretty much reloaded, or once the route is pretty much loaded, the user gets pretty much scrolled to the bottom. So to do that, we have to first of all create a ref. So what I will do is then const message and ref, which will be equal to use ref, and use ref is imported from React, and this will just be of type null, and null is of course lowercase. And now to make that work, I will have to create a new function. So let's do a const scroll to bottom. This will just be an arrow function. So let me open that. And now inside of here, I want to get my message and ref dot current dot scroll into view. And right here I see I don't get any TypeScript types, and that's because I have to pretty much give a generic for use ref. So let's give it a generic, which will be HTML input element. And now if I save that, you will see we get a TypeScript error. That's because scroll into view could be not defined. So let's do question mark dot scroll into view, and inside of here the behavior of that should just be smooth. So that's the function for that. And now I will have to create a use effect. So let's do that. And the use effect will just have a dependency array, and the dependency array will have the total comments, since I want to pretty much every time scroll down if we get a new message. And then inside of here, let me call my function scroll to bottom. And I think that's all we need actually. Or actually, before we are finished, we also have to create a div element with this ref of message and ref. So let me scroll down a bit. So under this mapping of the total comments, I want to create a new div element, and I want to give it a ref, and the ref will just be message and ref, just like that. So I think we are now done actually. And now if I go back, you will see if I reload the page. And now if I reload the page, you will see that we automatically, or the page in that sense, automatically pretty much scrolls down to the bottom. So that looks great. So we're now actually done. And I won't actually deploy this application today, but it's actually very easy. Again, just go to the code right here, open your README, and right here you will have this deployment field, and all you have to do is pretty much run npm run deploy. So you'll have to set your secret, so your planet scale database, but you will also have to create new pretty much GitHub access keys. So you will have to create a new client ID and a new secret key with the correct URL. That's a bit too much for today's video, so just do it on yourself. It's really not hard, it's very easy. So yeah, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you could learn a lot. I hope you could learn how to use servers, send events, how to create an event source, how to make the emitter work, how everything works, how easy it actually is in that sense. I mean, this tutorial is maybe 2 hours long, maximum maybe 1.5 hours. I don't know right now. But as you see, it's not that hard. I mean, we have created a basic, pretty much authentication chat application. You could make it bigger, you could make it more complex. But yeah, that's the basics. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.